This is Li Chang's son, the hero of our story, and he is now in the most dangerous place in hell. How did he get here, you ask? It all started as it always does. A gate opened on Earth and monsters poured in. The Earth needed heroes, hunters with supernatural powers, and some people were gifted with these abilities. One of those heroes turned out to be our protagonist. He was a loner, interested only in training. Even when his girlfriend dumped him for spending all his time at the gym, it didn't bother him one bit. His friends called him a dumbass for it, but he didn't care about them, just like he didn't care about his ex-girlfriend. When he became a hunter, a goddess appeared before him in a random dungeon and offered him a crazy deal which he accepted without a second thought. The only condition was that Chang Sun would have to train in a special training room in hell for thousands of years. By the way, time doesn't flow there as it does on Earth. But everything went wrong. The training room was destroyed by a magical storm and our hero fell into the depths of the abyss. Will he be able to survive and become the strongest as he always dreamed? Let's find out. A few weeks later, the storm throws him onto unknown soil. He lands on his knees, thinking it had been a hard first training session and wondering if this is the next stage. Little does our dear Chang Sun know this is an empty place in the abyss ungoverned by any constellation. The first thing he finds is a humongous serpent-like monster with scales of stone. Chang Sun wonders if he is supposed to capture it. The serpent resembles Onyx from Pokemon, but despite its appearance, it seems to be an A-rank monster far above his own capabilities as a mere C-rank hunter. He wonders if the goddess has grossly overestimated his abilities, but soon pushes the thought aside, believing she must have planned for this. He punches it with all his strength, but it doesn't even move or react. His attack is too weak to hurt it. This brings to mind how he started on this path. Chang Sun recalls his fellow hunters discussing the divine celestial technique, a D-rank martial art. They dismissed it as too slow and difficult, fearing the long and frustrating path to mastering it. No one wanted to take on this challenge except Chang Sun, who was interested in the technique, even though others thought it was a waste of time. Two older hunters warned him that it was a slow and difficult art that relies on inner energy, which takes a long time to develop. Most people chose faster techniques, but Chang Sun was drawn to the challenge. The divine celestial technique had no specific method for cultivating inner energy. Instead, every time he used its moves, the celestial punch, celestial footwork, and celestial kick, he would absorb exposed ambient energy, increasing his own inner energy bit by bit. If he could just repeat this endlessly, he would become a master. But not just anyone can do that. Coming back to the present, Chang Sun is trying to attack the stone serpent. While his attacks initially have no effect, he keeps it up for years and years. One day, as he punches it with all his might, he feels a sudden rush of power. The force of the punch shatters many of the serpent's hard, stony scales. It stares in shock at Chang Sun, who has now unlocked a new skill, Internal Strike B+ rank. It is a big improvement for his divine celestial technique. The system notifies him that he has reached the first class. The achievement, however, leaves him with a pang of doubt. He recalls stories of another martial arts hunter, Xian Li, a prominent Chinese warrior who had risen through martial arts alone. Xian Li is known for his Zenith class, which holds strength equivalent to the 6th circle of magic. When asked by reporters if he aims to grow even stronger, Xian Li replies that his goal is to become an S-ranker, an honor no martial artist had ever achieved before. This is slightly demotivating for Chang Sun, who believes it would take him nearly 1,000 years to reach such a rank. Nonetheless, tears of joy sting the serpent's eyes, realizing that Chang Sun's training and its days as a living punching bag are finally over. Chang Sun assures the serpent that he has no intention of killing it. After all, he was the one who had chosen it as a training partner, and their battles have been beneficial to him. As Chang Sun wonders where he has to go to start training again, The serpent bows its head, lifting him up as if offering a ride. Chang Sun is surprised, but thanks the stone serpent as moving around on foot takes far too long. It has been 100 years since he first arrived in this abyss. His memories drift back to the sound he heard upon arrival, a deep, resonant hum like the distant echo of a mana storm. He remembers wondering then if the goddess herself was guiding him. Now, as the serpent carries him forward, he muses on the possibility that his training here might soon be nearing another milestone. Of course, the serpent hisses. While our oblivious Chang Sun might not know it, the stone serpent absolutely knows that willingly entering a mana storm is a suicidal idea. Despite trying to convey that they might die, Chang Sun is headstrong and the serpent cannot convince him otherwise. Ah, what a sad day to be a serpent. Together they plunge into the heart of the storm, one in cheers, the other in tears. Chang Sun and the stone serpent have finally emerged from the mana storm. The serpent is still shocked by the horror of what they had just passed through. But Chang Sun remains under the hysterical misunderstanding that the storm was a form of transportation for people in the abyss. Yet he not only survived unscathed, but also thinks it was beneficial after reaching a higher level. He had discovered that when the mana from the storm entered his body, it not only relieved his fatigue, but trained it simultaneously. He marveled at the constellations, believing them to be amazing for controlling such power at will. Only the stone serpent understood the gravity of Chang Sun's misunderstanding. What our hero didn't know was that he had barely clung to life the first time, an ordeal that had luckily prepared his body to withstand the subsequent storm without being shredded to pieces. All of a sudden, Chang Sun wanted something to eat, although he didn't truly feel hungry even after his 100-year fast. The stone serpent lowered its massive head and offered him chunks of its own body, fragments of rock that had fallen off. Though they were just rocks since they came from its body, it was technically offering its flesh. He wondered if he could really eat it. The serpent nudged the rock towards him, and Chang Sun wondered if this was payback for the 100 years he had spent using it as a punching bag. However, the sincere look on the serpent's face was evident. Smiling, Chang Sun handed the rock back, saying he couldn't eat his friend no matter how hungry he was. This small act of kindness somehow triggered a system prompt notifying him that he had gained a complete understanding of the Great Serpent and had learned the stone martial arts. With this new skill learned, Chang Sun couldn't wait to try it out. He felt strong enough to smash mountains and flexible enough to swim through the air. Although the new technique was interesting, he had no intention of stopping his use of the divine celestial technique, as every transcendence deepened his enlightenment. Driven by his desire for the next training exercise, he eventually found himself standing before a vast sea, its waters an unnatural shade of purple. Aware of the danger such an environment posed to a creature of stone, he commanded the stone serpent to remain behind. Chang Sun steeled himself and strode into the waves. His body braced against the oncoming tide, but his defenses soon faltered under the unrelenting pressure of the poison sea. His divine celestial energy was being consumed rapidly, and its complete depletion would put his life at risk. Underwater, he faced dangerous sea creatures that looked like overgrown tadpoles, all of them attracted to his energy. The water was poisonous, making it hard to breathe, but he saw something glowing in the distance. Perhaps this was what he needed to clear this stage of his training. On land, the stone serpent's attention was drawn to ripples and bubbles on the surface of the water before it was startled by a huge fountain of water shooting into the air. It was just Chang Sun jumping out of the sea, slightly out of breath. Chang Sun muttered that if the sparkly thing at the bottom was the objective the goddess had assigned him, he didn't know how he would manage to pierce a poisoned sea. But his trust in his goddess did not waver. He finally decided that the only thing to do was to build up his inner strength using the divine celestial technique. This was not a very optimal solution. It took a long time. Although he felt himself getting stronger, 200 years had already passed for Chang Sun. He knew time flowed differently on Earth, but this was still taking too long. One day during his struggle, as he was watching his serpent friend eating rocks again, He was reminded of how he still wished he could eat like a human. He was no longer hungry due to the nature of the abyss, but it still felt like he was missing something from his life. He remembered saying something similar almost 200 years ago. Just then, he found a creature from the sea washed up on the shore, apparently dead. He decided to assume the peculiar beast was an edible fish. Driven by hunger and curiosity, he tried to cook and eat it. How bad could it be? Chang-sun needed to cook but didn't have a knife, so he punched a rock and broke off a sharp piece. He was calm and focused, showing how resourceful he could be. The stone serpent watched him with anxious eyes, wondering what on earth this human was doing. Chang-sun started cutting the creature, but the toxic fish began to melt both his rock knife and the stone slab he was using as a chopping board. He thought about eating it raw, but the serpent warned him with a nervous fit. It then tried to bring something out of its mouth, a special crystal adamantine, which was the most precious treasure for rock-type monsters. As Chang-sun used it on the fish, he realized that the crystal did not melt even after touching the toxins. Seeing this, he decided to make a set of cooking utensils for his time training in the abyss, recalling the words of his clan leader who had once stressed the importance of finding a hobby. Hunting, preparing, and consuming whatever he could find would help him while strengthening his physical resilience. With the utensils at hand, the most he could make was a raw slice of fish. Chang-sun tried to eat the fish monster, but it was disgusting. The stone serpent was visibly repulsed, making strange sounds of disgust. Chang-sun, however, was unfazed. He was used to eating bland and boring food. For him, food was just fuel, not something to enjoy. He was more focused on efficiency than taste. When Chang-sun took a bite of the fish monster, the taste was terrible, and poison started spreading through his body. But a system prompt showed that he was using his inner strength to fight the poison. Not only did he survive, but the poison actually made him stronger. He realized that these creatures could be a source of power, as long as he did not become intoxicated, and he could even harness their energy. Feeling stronger, Chang-sun looked at the sea. He saw the creatures not as enemies now, but as food. He decided to eat them all, using their power for himself. To make himself even stronger, he would no longer be afraid of their poison. Li Chang-sun spent a few hundred years exploring the depths of the sea, fighting and eating monstrous creatures. Gradually, he became immune to their poison and even learned to use it as a weapon. In the end, his poison immunity evolved into unconquerable poison immunity. Now he was not just immune to poison, but also capable of wielding it by drawing on the toxins stored within his dantian. As a result, his divine celestial technique also ascended to new ranks. Even though Chang-sun was powerful, he wondered why the goddess had not called him back yet. He thought about Earth, wondering if it was still the same. He knew he was incredibly strong now, perhaps even the strongest hunter on Earth. But the abyss was endless, and he felt he should continue his training. Thus, it was finally time to say goodbye to his stone serpent friend. They had been through a lot together, but the serpent could not follow him into the deepest parts of the ocean. It was too dangerous. The serpent did not want to leave, but Chang-sun knew it was the right thing to do. He could not risk his friend's life. After a final farewell to his companion, Chang-sun dived into the abyssal depths. He was now a presence that instilled fear in the hearts of the sea creatures. As he delved deeper, he finally discovered the source of the energy he'd first glimpsed, a shiny gateway, a portal to the next, and probably more perilous trial. A wave of energy coursed through his body as the divine celestial technique recognized the challenge ahead. A body trained in martial arts automatically prepares itself when it senses powerful opponents. However, even if Chang-sun hadn't trained in martial arts, he could have sensed the immense killing intent being focused on him. Constellations were beings whose powers were nearly equal to that of gods. Their attributes within their domain essentially dictated the laws of nature there, and this just happened to be the domain of the dominator of blood and war. A towering and ghastly creature looked at Chang-sun with a strange curiosity. When Chang Sun said he was human, the creature scoffed, finding the idea laughable. It knew Chang Sun was new to this place and decided to enlighten him. As it spoke, it pulled out a monstrous blade. The creature declared it would behead Chang Sun as a welcome gift, a lesson for the newcomer. But Chang Sun misinterpreted this monstrous declaration as part of a brutal training program. In his mind, this entire encounter was some twisted simulation designed to push him to his limits. Readying himself, he harnessed all the energy within him, condensing it into his fist and transforming his ki into a compact and formidable force. But as the blade descended, Chang Sun caught it with his bare hand, his hardened ki clashing with the razor-sharp steel. He countered with fierce resolve, launching himself upward and landing a powerful kick that sent the creature staggering backward. The other monsters watched in surprise. Humans were supposed to be weak here, but Chang Sun was different. Some whispered in shock, while others readied themselves for battle. Meanwhile, Chang Sun remained blissfully unaware of the reality he faced, still thinking this was all just a test set before him. But the monsters misunderstood Chang Sun's stance. They thought he was trying to impress the dominator to gain favor, and looked down on him, seeing him as weak and unworthy. The monsters attacked, eager to tear him apart, but Chang Sun fought back fiercely, his punches and kicks powerful and precise. He moved with grace and speed, dodging and weaving through their attacks. At one point, the monsters even brought a cursed hellhound-like dogs with them. But as Chang Sun fought, he realized the vastness of the place. Monsters kept appearing in endless waves. He understood that he could not win by sheer strength alone. This place was designed to drain him. The Dominator's domain had its own rules: fight until you win or die. There was no other way. Struggling to gain an advantage, Chang Sun caught sight of a structure in the distance. Driven by both desperation and curiosity, he surged toward it, dodging strikes and evading lunges. Finally, he reached the building and forcefully kicked the door open, announcing, "I'll be borrowing this place if only for a brief reprieve." Inside, he encountered a monster seemingly engaged in the mundane task of preparing soup. A strange sense of normalcy pervaded the room, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. It was a bit too normal. The creature looked up, and for a moment Chang Sun considered the possibility that this monster might be more benign, or at least disinterested in fighting. He asked whether the creature had anything decent to eat, mentioning that he hadn't had a proper meal in days. The monster listened with feigned civility, ladling out the soup with a polite nod. But as Chang Sun approached it, suddenly hurled the pot of boiling toxic liquid toward him. Noxious fumes filled the air with a deadly venom meant to incapacitate him. However, the toxin was nothing to Chang Sun, who had mastered immunity to poisons. The deadly substance merely strengthened him, feeding his energy reserves. He absorbed the poison as easily as breathing, converting it into raw power that coursed through him, amplifying his physical prowess. The monster recoiled, its eyes widening as it realized its fatal miscalculation. Before it could react, more monsters from outside had pushed their way into the building, filling the small space with snarling, violent energy. They surged toward him, undeterred by the fate of their fallen kin, eager to subdue the human who had dared to defy them. But Li Chang Sun was prepared. In a swift motion, he flung tables and chairs across the room, creating obstacles to slow their approach. The furniture crashed into the advancing monsters, scattering them momentarily, and Chang Sun positioned himself to defend against the next wave. He had been locked in a relentless battle for hours, transforming a simple chair into a deadly weapon. He had mastered the art of chair fist, a unique martial art born from desperation and necessity. This life-or-death struggle had awakened a new level of awareness within him. Every sense was heightened, every move calculated. Meanwhile, the goddess of balance was still worried about Chang Sun. Even the angel Adonai, one of her most diligent servants, was scouring the realms in a near-impossible search for him, but it was unlikely he could be found in the abyss. After a fierce final struggle, Chang Sun stood alone, victorious over every monster that dared to challenge him. But as he rested, a thought lingered. How many more battles would he have to fight? His senses, honed to near perfection from his prolonged ordeal, picked up on something unusual emanating from the depths of the restaurant. He felt a powerful aura concentrated in a single spot. Drawn to it, Chang-sun moved toward the source only to be intercepted by a hand gripping his leg. It was the restaurant's owner. Wait, didn't this guy die? Never mind. The owner pleaded with him, begging him not to drink from the precious pot that he had worked so hard to obtain. He explained that the dominator of blood and war did not tolerate dull or uneventful battles. Such monotony was no life for warriors like themselves who would be forced to fight, die, and be reborn, only to repeat the cycle endlessly if they allowed themselves to grow complacent. This pot was something the owner had suffered greatly to find. But Chang-sun was unmoved. In a swift, dismissive motion, he kicked the owner aside, asserting that in a contest of life and death, the victor claims the prize. With this decisive act, Chang-sun declared both the pot and the entire restaurant his rightful spoils. "Today marks the birth of a new era within these walls," he announced. "This establishment is now mine, and it will henceforth be known as the Demon Inn." Yet the original demonic owner was not willing to let go so easily, still groveling for the place he once ruled. Chang-sun, however, made his stance clear: if the demon wanted it back, he would have to fight for it. As Chang-sun surveyed his new domain, he noted the surprisingly clean state of the kitchen, the one area seemingly untouched by the endless skirmishes. But he found the pantry sparse, devoid of usable tools or ingredients. Aware that he would have to make do, Chang-sun resigned himself to eating whatever he could find raw and unaltered. He tried eating some meat only to discover it was poisonous. Instead of fear, curiosity took over. Why would a demon poison its own food? He found a strange fruit, and sure enough, it too was poisonous. Frustration grew. Was everything in this darn restaurant toxic? Was this regular food for demons? Chang-sun tapped into his unconquerable poison immunity skill, laughing at the poison. If this was the best that demons could do, then he would make a feast out of it. And why not? If he was immune to poison, he might as well turn it into a power-up. After all, a little poison never hurt anyone. Right. From that day on, Chang-sun settled into a routine that bordered on the bizarre. By day, he battled monsters that ventured into his inn, testing his strength and honing his chair fist technique. By night, he experimented with poisons and ingredients that would be unusable in conventional cooking. And so, hundreds of years passed. One day, the old demon owner returned with an army of monsters. They wanted to take back the inn. Chang-sun acknowledged their persistence, but it didn't matter as they could not defeat him. He warned them while kicking them out that this place was no mere restaurant. It was now the Demon Inn. His years of fighting had tempered him, and suddenly a system prompt appeared saying that he had received the A-rank skill, Body and Fist as One. This strengthened his divine celestial technique and made his inner strength circulation faster. For a martial artist, the Body and Fist as One technique is a very powerful skill that makes one dozens of times faster and synergizes the body and mind. Many people want to learn it, but very few can. It is a rare and expensive skill often found in secret scrolls. Chang-sun learned it through hard work and many fights, although even he did not know the exact requirements he had to fulfill. But what he did know was that if people on Earth knew about his skill, they would be very jealous. Of course, that wasn't happening any sooner than him returning to Earth. Meanwhile, monsters continued to pour in, and unbeknownst to Chang-sun, a dark figure flew through the sky, approaching the inn. On a regular day, the ground was covered with the bodies of monsters he had defeated. For 100 years he had lived there, fighting and winning against countless creatures. No monster could defeat him. They tried to attack him, but he was too strong. This place was his home, and no one could take it from him. Any attempt to breach his encampment, to lure him out, or to provoke him ended only in their own destruction. The monsters were now gathered around Chang Sun's camp, trying to find a way to defeat him, but no matter what they did, they could not break through. His defenses were impenetrable. The demons were frustrated and confused. Li Chang Sun also felt restless. He was strong, but he felt he could be even stronger. He just didn't know how. Suddenly, the monsters outside the camp started shouting, boasting about how they had fresh void beast meat and adamantium. They taunted him, shouting about the treasures lying about, trying to lure him out of his impenetrable fortress. Chang Sun was annoyed not by the monsters' taunts, but by their pathetic attempt at acting. He finally stepped out of his safe place, ready to fight. He knew that staying inside would not help him grow stronger. He wanted to challenge himself and reach his full potential. As Chang Sun exited his sanctuary, the monsters swarmed him, but he dispatched them effortlessly one by one as he had done countless times before. Yet this time there was a new monster in the crowd, much larger and far more menacing. The monster drew its massive sword, slamming it into the ground with a force that shook the earth. Undaunted, Chang Sun sidestepped the blade, easily evading the strike. The monster seethed, unable to accept the prospect of defeat at his hands. In that moment, Chang Sun recalled the words of Xian Li, a renowned martial artist and A-class hunter, who once described the ultimate stage of martial arts as one where confidence in oneself is absolute. In the past, such confidence had eluded him. His focus had been entirely on cultivating inner strength, on relentless, desperate attacks against his foes. His urgency and drive stemmed from an underlying insecurity he could never fully name. But now, standing amid his fallen foes, he realized he had shed that insecurity. Chang Sun felt at peace, his mind as calm as a still lake. The world around him seemed to speak to him, affirming his strength. He moved fluidly, seamlessly, evading attacks, his body imbued with the divine strength granted by the celestial technique he had mastered. He no longer relied solely on brute force. Instead, he absorbed and redirected his opponent's strength against them. Through this realization, he attained enlightenment, understanding the full counter technique. It was an insight that transformed him. He silently thanked the demons for their misguided attempts. Apart from the technique, he also obtained the adamantium and the rare meat after all. Chang Sun went back to his safe place, laughing at the monsters. He told them he would only fight when they brought him more meat or adamantium. The monsters were confused and angry. They knew they could not beat him in a fight, so the next time they brought the materials, they tried to attack him from afar, bombarding him with powerful magic. A series of explosions shattered the air, flames and shadows intermingling in a fierce assault on his encampment. But as the smoke cleared, the demons saw Chang Sun's silhouette rising unharmed. He had survived the attack and successfully increased his body's durability by another stage. The more the demons attempted to overwhelm him, the more his power grew, the gap between them widening with each encounter. As the years went by, the monsters finally realized they could not defeat Chang Sun. They were tired and hopeless. Feeling a bit playful, Chang Sun let them attack him one by one. He knew he would win, but he also understood their desire to fight. Monsters lined up to challenge him, and the waiting line was quite literally as long as hell. The demons were surprisingly docile, as Chang Sun promised to fight them all as long as they didn't make a commotion. "Sigh, these muscleheads," he thought. One such day, while reflecting on how he had gotten quite close with the demons, he examined the hunter card given to him by the association long ago. The card, enchanted with magic, displayed his current stats, and he marveled at the transformation. Once a mere C+ rank, he now possessed abilities far beyond anything he could have imagined. His rank had not changed, but his skills had evolved. Divine celestial technique, complete poison immunity, body and fist, as one mastery full, counter mastery, invulnerable body, and the legendary gathering of the three flowers. He had achieved a state of heavenly perfection, a resonance with the world itself that granted him an insight transcending all others. It was this final skill, the resonance from the world, that intrigued him most. It was an ability he had never heard of. His stats had grown incomprehensibly high, and every skill he possessed had ascended beyond anything he'd once imagined. His list of abilities stretched on each one shining with a rank of mastery. But the gathering of the three flowers, now that was something even more profound, more mystical. This technique, rarely seen on Earth, was a martial ability hunters only spoke of in legends. The gathering of the three flowers marked the pinnacle of ki cultivation used when a hunter's powers were honed to absolute purity, when the quality of their inner strength was refined to an immaculate state. Should this purity falter, the skill would weaken. Yet if nurtured and cultivated with dedication, it could elevate a warrior to mythical status, a pinnacle where the three flowers of ki vitality and spirit bloom as one. Chang Sun remembered tales of great martial artists who had achieved such a level. Those individuals were known to have mastered unique A-rank techniques like the Violet Chi Divine technique or the legendary Divine Tai Chi technique. To reach this pinnacle was to touch the heights of martial skill, yet Chang Sun never intended to seek such perfection. He had simply wandered through the abyss, fighting and surviving day after day. In the abyss, his time stretched into an eternity, allowing him to cultivate a pure form of inner strength without ever realizing its full impact. Unbeknownst to him, his body had become the embodiment of a heavenly martial body, an ideal physique where his affinity for ki reached unimaginable depths. While this is often considered an innate gift, a rarity among the rare Li Chang Sun now understood that his body had been refined through sheer will, not merely bestowed by fate. Far away, the goddess of balance seethed in her realm, her gaze unable to locate him. She had lost track of Chang Sun in the ever-shifting layers of the abyss, his existence now hidden from her omniscience. Chang Sun, however, remained oblivious to her frustration, his focus solely on his own path. His skills had evolved beyond mortal comprehension, and he had now attained what he deemed the state of perfection. This level, born of relentless training and countless battles, was a state that allowed him to observe martial techniques once and master them instantly. Skills that took others lifetimes to perfect were his to wield in mere moments, much like a mage summons spells. And yet resonance from the world eluded his understanding. It had no rank, no discernible origin, and no defined limit. Resonance from the universe, as he called it, felt like a part of something vaster, as though he were approaching a peak of existence. This strange ability implied an alignment with the universe itself, a connection suggesting he was transcending mere humanity. Unaware of the impending consequences, Chang Sun found himself on the verge of becoming the first human-born constellation. Chang Sun finished cooking a soup and looked at his hunter card. Soon the demon inn was filled with wounded monsters. They were amazed by his strength and respected him. Chang Sun served them food with kindness, not as a conqueror, but as a cook. Yet he told the losers to try his experimental food before leaving. They enjoyed the taste of his cooking, but vowed to grow stronger, determined to face him again. For years, Chang Sun experimented with recipes, refining his skills as a chef. And although one of the losers was happy that his experimental dish turned out well, another spat it out, saying not even a pig would eat it. Obviously, he couldn't succeed every time. Just then, a demon threw his food on the ground, complaining that he was there to fight, not to eat. But the demon didn't even realize what was happening before Chang Sun launched a punch from a distance, the force of his ki extending across the room and completely obliterating the demon's upper body, killing it on the spot. The dumb demon should have just told him if he didn't want the food. Why did he have to throw and waste it? Thus life inside the demon inn continued with playful bickering and lots of food. As time passed, he earned a new skill: Abyss low-grade cooking, C rank. Yet in contrast, his inner strength felt stifled, blocked by the limitations of his current state. His dantian, the core of his power, had reached its peak capacity, leaving him unable to increase his strength further. Reflecting on this, he realized that no one remained stronger than him within the confines of his world. The once insurmountable heights he sought to conquer now seemed within his grasp, but this created an unexpected challenge. With no higher reference to guide him, he faced the daunting task of breaking through this barrier alone. He needed a formidable opponent, someone who could push him beyond his limits. But in this place, he had found only monsters who either feared him or revered him as an unbeatable force. A knock echoed through the inn, interrupting his thoughts. A demon entered, and Chang Sun welcomed him, informing him of the high-quality meat brought in that day. Yet as he turned, he saw the monstrous figure standing at the threshold was unfamiliar. This creature exuded a power that was incomparable to those he had encountered before, its aura radiating an intense, almost infinite magic. Chang Sun knew this meeting would be important. The creature's power was immense, even greater than his own. This would be a new challenge, a chance to grow stronger. This stranger could be the adversary he had sought. Chang Sun offered a bowl of meat to the stranger. Observing from behind the counter, he immediately noticed the vast aura that engulfed the beast. It was clear that this creature was not only powerful, but possibly even stronger than him. As the monster finished its meal, it casually produced a massive ingot of adamantium, a precious metal of which Chang Sun had only seen smaller fragments. Its size alone was a marvel far larger than anything he had ever seen, and for a moment he was taken aback. Curiosity piqued Chang Sun, offered the monster another bowl, sensing that this being might be more than he initially assumed. Yet the creature declined. Suddenly, the demon asked Chang Sun if he was human, to which he responded in the affirmative. The demon bowed lightly, introducing itself as Varigos, the first family member of the dominator of blood and war. With a prideful bearing, Varigos announced that he was a harbinger, one tasked with spreading his master's will, and had come to deliver an invitation for Chang Sun to join their ranks. Varigos spoke of his master with reverence, detailing the significance of being part of the Dominator's family. He conveyed how this would elevate Chang Sun in the cosmic hierarchy, allowing him access to unparalleled power and influence. Varigos assumed Chang Sun would be honored, even overjoyed to accept such an offer. After all, no matter how strong a mortal was, no matter the distances or the world one comes from, a direct invitation from a constellation, a celestial being of nearly limitless power is a rarity. Refusal, he believed, was unthinkable. Yet to Varigos' astonishment, Li Chang Sun declined the proposal with an air of calm resolve. This unexpected rejection roused a dangerous fury in Varigos, whose pride was shaken by such blatant defiance. The air thickened as his anger manifested a surge of pressure flooding the inn and challenging Chang Sun. But Chang Sun, undeterred, faced Varigos head-on. He recognized this confrontation as a long-awaited opportunity, a truly worthy opponent capable of pushing him further toward his ambition for strength. In the tense silence, Varigos insisted that Chang Sun's potential was precisely what his master sought, that the dominator of blood and war thrived on followers who embraced battle and adversity. Yet he could not fathom why Chang Sun would refuse. In response, Chang Sun mentioned a prior commitment, a promise made to another constellation, one he was unwilling to break. Varigos grew curious and pressed for details, sensing no trace of constellation energy around Chang Sun. Chang Sun admitted that although he had not yet joined any family, he awaited a place promised by a constellation with the power to foresee the future, one who had assured him that his path lay with her. Varigos laughed at Chang Sun, calling him a liar. He explained that powerful beings quickly claimed mortals with potential either through contracts or by taking them to their own worlds. Varigos was sure that if Chang Sun were truly special, he would have been taken away already. He could not believe that Chang Sun was still free. Chang Sun refused to believe Varigos. He was confident that his constellation had a plan for him. He told Varigos about his long journey and the many challenges he had faced. Varigos was more confused than skeptical. He said that if Chang Sun were truly special, he would have been taken away by his constellation long ago. Furthermore, if there were really a constellation capable of controlling mana storms, as Chang Sun suggested, then they would have already conquered the abyss. He asked if Chang Sun was sure that he didn't simply get caught up and transported there in a magical storm. Before he could speak further, Chang Sun released a fierce and angry aura, shutting his mouth. Chang Sun began to doubt himself. Maybe his journey wasn't planned after all. Maybe it was just a terrible accident. He had never stopped to doubt it for an instant amidst the excitement of growing stronger. He felt sad and tearful as he exited the inn, thinking he should have questioned this long ago. But he held back his tears, knowing that even a single tear could weaken him. Chang Sun made up his mind to return to Earth, as he had already wasted many years. But Varigos blocked his path. The wielder of the Axe of Blood, Varigos, finally revealed his true form. He would not let Chang Sun escape his master, the dominator of blood and war. Varigos was very powerful and ready to fight. He said that even if Chang Sun died, the dominator would bring him back to life again and again. As they clashed, Varigos noticed something unusual about Chang Sun's movements. Despite the lack of any visible magic aura, Chang Sun moved with a speed and agility that defied logic, almost as though he were moving faster than the eye could track. Intrigued, Varigos realized this must be a result of the celestial footwork technique, a rare skill that infuses physical prowess with divine power, allowing Chang Sun to maneuver in ways that seem impossible for a mere mortal. The sight stirred Varigos's warrior spirit, and he intensified his attacks, drawing upon his blood baptism technique, an ability that bypassed the need for traditional mana and tapped directly into his own vitality and rage. A rain of corrosive liquid that looked like blood fell upon Chang Sun. Chang Sun's invulnerable body technique shielded him from the worst of Varigos's attack, but it still would not be enough to withstand the enemy's skill for long. Meanwhile, the demon taunted him to finish up soon as his master, the dominator of blood and war, awaited them. The air trembled under the oppressive weight of the dark red mana pouring down like an acidic torrent, burning, melting, and annihilating anything unfortunate enough to encounter it. This ability was a terrifying show of Varigos's overwhelming magic, a force that transcended human understanding far beyond the capabilities of any mortal magician. Chang Sun's body swelled with power, his fists radiating an intense aura that seemed almost alive, amplifying with each motion. His heightened senses and mastery over the heavenly martial body technique allowed him to conserve inner strength with perfect precision through the gathering of the three flowers. His every move was sharpened. For Chang Sun, this was unlike any danger he had ever faced. In the face of Varigos's unimaginable power, Chang Sun's mind became still. Long gone were the doubts and frustrations that once held him back, the regret over time he thought wasted on misunderstandings. Now he was fully immersed in a clarity akin to the calm he felt in the heart of this mana-infused storm. Speed became his most vital asset. He focused intently on the flow of energy around him, reading every shift with his heightened perception. He anticipated each drop of the corrosive rain from Varigos's power and evaded them with precision. The art of phantom footwork elevates him beyond ordinary movement. He achieves a rank once thought unreachable, an S-rank technique that enables him to traverse space in an instant, allowing him to move to any location he envisions in the blink of an eye. Varigos is stunned. In all his experience, he has never seen a mortal evade his baptism of blood, a magic spell capable of obliterating legions. To him, martial arts had always seemed like the domain of the weak, an antiquated practice inferior to the vast power wielded by true magicians. But Li Chang Sun's skill forces him to reconsider, a grudging respect rising within him. Varigos contemplates the differences between their abilities, acknowledging that magic users command limitless energy by tapping into the boundless mana of their surroundings. Martial artists, in contrast, draw strength solely from their own bodies. Yet as he observes Chang Sun, Varigos realizes that martial arts had originated not as a path of weakness, but as a means to defy the natural order. He recalls an ancient tale he once heard a legend from the realm of the constellations. Long ago, in a distant land under a powerful constellation's rule, a group of enslaved individuals incited an uprising challenging the very laws governing their world. The uprising persisted, fueled by a strange new discipline that did not rely on borrowed power. This technique, this act of defiance, was martial arts, a way of drawing strength from within. If Li Chang-sun had been a mage Varagos muses, he would have already fallen, his body dissolved by the bloody tide of the baptism of blood. But Chang-sun's will to resist fuels him, and he advances, fist raised in defiance. Chang-sun's punch lands on Varagos with all the force he can muster, yet the impact is disappointingly ineffective. Varagos smiles darkly, almost mocking, and declares that he has been blessed by the powers of blood. His body surges with newfound energy, and he swings his axe onto the earth. The impact reverberates through the battlefield like a shockwave. The air crackles with pressure, and each magical wave brings Varagos closer to his peak. In Chang-sun, he has found an opponent worthy of his fullest power. Chang-sun fought hard against Varagos, using his amazing speed and power from phantom footwork, but Varagos was protected by a powerful magic shield. He knows he must reach a new level of power to have any chance of victory. Drawing upon his inner strength, he begins to channel his energy, gathering it within himself. This concentrated energy, known as fist ki, is the product of intense focus, a manifestation of Chang-sun's martial essence. But fist ki alone is insufficient. Its limitations have long been evident. However, there exists a way to transcend this boundary, a technique so demanding that only one other martial artist, Xian Li, had managed it centuries ago, even if only for a fleeting moment. This legendary technique, the Ki fortification method, demands an unparalleled reserve of inner strength. It compresses fist ki to a density beyond normal limits, transforming it into a nearly impenetrable force. The sheer power required for this technique makes it almost impractical for most fighters, but Chang-sun has already reached a level far beyond that of Xian Li. Summoning every ounce of his energy, he channels it into his fists. Chang-sun gathered all his strength, his body glowing with a fierce energy. With a thunderous step, he launched himself at Varagos, his fist a weapon of pure power. The impact was earth-shattering. Varagos's magical shield cracked and shattered under the force of Chang-sun's attack. The once seemingly invincible shield of blood magic has finally been destroyed. Likewise, Varagos's master's blessing, the powerful aura that had safeguarded him through countless battles, splinters into fragments. Yet Varagos cannot accept what he sees. Chang-sun, however, knows he is treading dangerous ground. Each of his techniques depletes his inner strength at an unforgiving rate. The battle rages on with no respite and no forgiveness. A brilliant light, blinding in its purity, fills the vast, dark arena as Chang-sun and Varagos clash. Above, monstrous creatures gather to observe, whispering in awe among themselves. It has been nearly half a year since the conflict began, and still neither warrior submits. To the audience, Chang-sun's endurance is the stuff of legend. Yet Chang-sun is far from invincible. Gritting his teeth, he channels his inner reserves, pouring his remaining kai into his next attack, a celestial punch imbued with his fist aura. Power surges through him, burning like fire, consuming his energy at an accelerated pace that would drain any ordinary warrior in an instant. In response, he activates the gathering of the three flowers, a mastery that allows him to draw ki at a rate fast enough to keep pace with his body's demand. Alongside this, his heavenly martial body works in tandem, slowing the consumption, sustaining him, even as he feels the limits of his endurance stretched thin. Varagos watches with a darkened gaze, his sneer unmistakable as he senses Chang-sun's efforts. To Varagos, this protracted struggle is nothing more than an inconvenience, a game dragged on too long by a mere mortal. He decides in this moment that the time has come to end this futile exchange. he will crush Chang Sun, erase him entirely, and lay waste to every spark of defiance that dares to rise against him. Varigos calls upon his master's gift, summoning a dark, unholy power that has long lain dormant within him. Flames erupt around him, burning with an intense heat. His strength multiplies infinitely, transforming him into a vessel of pure destruction. His once massive figure shifts, condensing into a compact, swift form that grants him agility unlike any he has wielded before. Now, with this amplified strength and newfound speed, Varigos moves with an otherworldly swiftness, darting around Li Changsun in blinding arcs, his figure a dark streak against the dim backdrop of the abyss. For Changsun's survival becomes an impossible test of endurance. The once impenetrable protection of his body begins to crack under Varigos's relentless onslaught. He feels the familiar weight of ki depletion, his body teetering on the brink of emptiness. Yet he cannot afford to lose focus, as that would mean death. Knowing that time and energy are slipping away, Chang Sun finds himself faced with a desperate decision. His only choice is to push forward, to sacrifice every last reserve if necessary to bring this battle to an irrevocable end. From the moment he had entered the abyss, he had never once emptied his inner strength completely. That would be practically suicide for a human here. But with not much choice left, he uses all his remaining inner strength to deliver a final punch. Surprisingly, this awakens within himself a new ability. Celestial String, an enhancement that weaves divine energy into his techniques, elevating his combat prowess to unparalleled heights. His divine celestial technique begins to evolve in real time, each strike now pulsing with newfound energy and razor-sharp precision. As Chang Sun's aura expands, Varigos senses a transformation. The thought of this mortal rival ascending of Chang Sun, becoming a new constellation within the abyss, strikes Varigos with a horror he has never known. He cannot allow it. In his master's domain in this territory, he has claimed as his own, the rise of a challenger is an abomination. He watches with mounting fury as Chang Sun's form begins to expand, growing colossal, his presence towering over the abyss like the dawn of some new, unholy god. The restraints that have bound his spirit dissolve, leaving behind only raw, boundless power. Chang Sun is no longer simply a warrior in the throes of survival. He has become something greater, something transcendent. His inner strength now resonates with the immensity of the cosmos. Within his dantian, a universe of energy pulses, an endless reservoir of power waiting to be unleashed. He has ascended beyond mortal understanding, reaching a rank of strength that defies description. The technique that fortifies his ki achieves an S rank, elevating him to a level of might previously inconceivable. Along with this, he gains an unparalleled ability, subduing the strong and assisting the weak. Chang Sun's celestial fist comes crashing down one final time, obliterating the last vestiges of Varigos's defenses. The Dominator's body, once a vessel of terror, shatters under the impact. The universe vast and unending awaits his next command, his next step. Chang Sun stands amidst the aftermath of his battle with Varigos, realizing with a deepening awareness that countless constellations across the universe are watching him. Each expresses their interest in their own way. The cat of lava and magma acknowledges him with a casual wave of its paw. The cardinal of plague and darkness extends an offer of a weapon, a sickle. Even the bull who stomps the world bellows its approval. Yet none capture his attention as much as the dominator of blood and war who looks upon him with anger. The system notifies him that he has won the battle and gained power from the universe due to the effects of his self-conquered title. Varigos, despite his own impressive prowess, concedes his defeat with dignity. He acknowledges Chang Sun's potential, encouraging him to grow beyond these small victories, urging him to push his power so far that even the constellations themselves would find it impossible to look down upon him. Varigos speaks with conviction, planting the seed of an idea in Chang Sun's mind to one day etch his own name among the stars to become a constellation himself. Stunned by the enormity of such an idea, Chang Sun tries to dismiss it, yet he cannot fully ignore it. As Varigos fades from the scene, promising to meet him again for another contest, Chang Sun feels a stirring within an unfamiliar pressure building as he contemplates the stares of the watching constellations. He attains a new level of understanding, reaching what he knows to be a zenith, a peak state of being in which he begins to grasp the depth of power that flows from self-mastery. The constellation gazes bear down upon him, waiting and intense like 1,000 spears, challenging his resolve. Yet Chang Sun feels the temptation they bring. The cat of lava and magma proposes a meeting, and the cardinal of plague and darkness does the same. Yet for all their invitations, Chang Sun understands that constellations like these rarely move from their thrones. They must be cautious, for in the abyss competition is fierce. If one constellation loosens its grip over its domain, other ambitious entities would seize it, toppling kingdoms in a single ruthless stroke. He understands that they watch him as they would an arena match, their interest akin to spectators of a universal game, waiting for him to slip, so they might consume the remnants of his strength. The dominator of blood and war soon reveals his true intent, placing a bounty on Chang Sun's head. Chang Sun faces a relentless barrage of monsters drawn by the bounty and by their own hunger for strength. He has always fought to carve his own path, not to serve the whims of greater beings. He knows that aligning himself with a constellation would only subjugate him. Every moment he is reminded of Varigos's words, urging him to surpass even the highest powers of the abyss. Among the crowd of constellations, each offers him something in exchange for his allegiance. The cardinal of plague and darkness tries to entice him with the ability to unleash plagues, but Chang Sun refuses, sparking laughter from the other constellations, who mock the cardinal's desperate offer. The cat of lava and magma, undeterred, offers him a tome of magic, the fabled Cat's Book. But Chang Sun, resolute in his path, declines, declaring that he will rely on martial arts alone. The cat then presents him with a piece of adamantium. This time Chang Sun accepts, but only on his terms. He will use the metal not as a symbol of submission, but as a tool to forge his own destiny. The cat, seemingly pleased, yet subtly exasperated, advises him to consider forming a contract. Chang Sun's voice rings out defiantly. "No way in hell am I going to become a lackey after coming this far." To the cat, this hipster remains a hipster. Chang Sun finds himself gazing one last time upon the constellation of the cat of lava and magma, wondering where on earth it learned words like that. He walks back and arrives at the Demon Inn, but now it is unrecognizable in ruins. Amid the wreckage, he searches for a lost piece of adamantium, a part of his past that perhaps no longer holds the meaning it once did. Indifferent now, ignoring the silent taunts from distant stars, he leaves the inn behind. Meanwhile, the angel Adonai wanders the abyss. His surroundings are bluish, filled with plateau-like surfaces. A two-headed leopard-like creature turns its head as Adonai asks if it has seen Chang Sun, showing a hologram and mentioning a constellation is looking for him. The creature, however, is hostile, but its attack is useless. Adonai's power is overwhelming his punch, throwing the monster aside effortlessly. The angel's cold, resonant voice questions the others, but they are uncooperative. With a sigh, the angel leaves, and the search for Chang Sun continues. Elsewhere, other watchers take note. The observer with 100 faces. A constellation of profound perception watches Chang Sun's actions from afar. The demon king of sloth, intrigued by the unfolding journey, promises a reward for any news of his movements. The master of twisted illusions scoffs, suspecting some hidden motive behind the goddess's actions. In the mortal world, as in the heavens, constellations have their rivalries. For one like Adonai to wander across boundaries is an act rarely seen. Realizing the prying eyes upon him, Adonai activates the barrier of the gods, an arcane skill that shields him from their relentless gaze. The observer with 100 faces, watching from a distance, frowns at the sight, his frustration apparent. The master of twisted illusions also scoffs, bemused by the goddess's cunning in orchestrating such a spectacle. The demon king of devious flames, in a bold offer, promises the skill of hellfire in exchange for the barrier to be lowered, seeking a glimpse of what lies within. Yet Adonai remains resolute, undeterred by their pleas or bribes. Meanwhile, Li Chang-sun is still in the Forsaken Land within the Dominator of Blood and War's domain. He raises his fist, striking the empty air while training. He had mastered the divine celestial technique. He was no longer just human. He was a godlike being. Every move he made was perfect, every strike powerful. He was one with the world, his power flowing through everything around him. Yet he continued using the celestial punch just like when he first started training. With a final punch, a system prompt notifies him that he has chosen a life befitting of his status as his existential power increases. When he slayed Varigos and decided to leave the Dominator's domain, he had seen a large change to the unknown skill called resonance from the world. He had reached the peak of his presence, and the world was resonating in response. This is what earned him the title of the undefeated avatar of training, embodying the art of self-perfection, ever pushing the boundaries of his form. But how was he supposed to grow stronger and become a constellation now? As Chang-sun contemplates his path, monsters approach guardians of this dominion. They mock him, belittling his intrusion as an affront to the Dominator's authority, taunting him with memories of past encounters. Yet within him, the realization dawns that his path to constellationhood lies in honing his essence, deepening his existential power. To exist as a constellation, he must embody the ideals he seeks, his presence growing until it is large enough. He faces the monsters with renewed purpose, dispatching them with grace and precision, even wielding one hand at times as if their attacks are but an afterthought. As years pass, he trains tirelessly in the abyss, a place untouched by the constellation's light. His power grows not only through his inner strength, but through skills born from his confrontations. He gains new abilities, subdue the strong and assist the weak, and self-conqueror titles that embody his strength. His power of presence swells an aura that commands and influences. The skill of self-conqueror resonates, showing others the path of inner mastery, a rule unto itself. If constellations were to start following contradictions, where a cardinal of plague and darkness would wield healing magic, and a dominator of blood and war would speak of peace, their power would weaken, and so would their celestial standing, for their influence is shaped by the ideals they embody. Chang-sun understands this implicitly. To wield self-conqueror, he must face an opponent stronger than himself, yet he must never falter, for his worth lies in his unwavering resolve. Suddenly, the ground breaks open, revealing a colossal figure emerging from the darkness, the stone serpent. Chang-sun stares, memories stirring of a time when the serpent had been a loyal companion. The serpent's stone-scaled body looms massive and imposing, a being of ancient power that has come seeking him once more. The sight of his old friend rekindles a spark of memory. He steps forward, arms wide, as he welcomes his old companion. But his friend's response is cryptic, unsettling. Chang-sun's gaze travels down, taking in the sight of other serpents clustered around his friend, other stone beasts similar to it, but bearing none of the warmth it once held. They seem menacing, their eyes gleaming with a cold, unyielding threat. His friend's silent alarm reaches Chang-sun even without words. The stone serpents have gathered with a purpose, and it is clear they are here not as friends, but as hunters. Chang-sun realizes that he is the prey. Suddenly, Chang-sun feels a terrifying presence rising from the earth. It is a creature so huge and powerful that it makes everything else seem small. He knew this creature's magic was so strong it filled the air with a chilling energy. He was facing his greatest challenge yet, the Hydra, a gargantuan serpent bearing 9 heads. Chang Sun had attracted the attention of constellations before. Some cheered him on, admiring his unyielding strength, while others sought his downfall, seeing in him a potential rival. Among his most relentless adversaries is the dominator of blood and war, a being who despises Chang Sun for having vanquished a servant in his own domain. The dominator and other powerful beings saw Chang Sun as a threat, so he went to the Abyss, a place where powerful creatures lived free from their control. The Hydra, the ruler of its own domain in the Abyss, was one of the most powerful beings there. It had immense power, but it was wild and uncontrolled. Within Chang Sun, skills ignite in response to the threat. His abilities to subdue the strong and empower the weak surge to life, resonating with the energy of his surroundings. He feels his power growing, drawn to the challenge before him. He recognizes that this fight will test him, push him beyond his limits. The aura of the undefeated avatar of training surrounds him, solidifying his resolve. The stone serpent's warning lingers in his mind, but Chang Sun's spirit, shaped by relentless battles, drives him forward. The Hydra seethes with rage, perceiving Chang Sun as a defiler of its domain. Each of its 9 heads is alive with a malice so intense it could bring lesser beings to their knees. Poison drips from its fangs, potent enough to incapacitate even the constellations. Its breath alone is a death sentence. Yet Chang Sun remains undeterred. His past battles have steeled him against such overwhelming killing intent. The Hydra lunges its jaws, snapping down with a force that reverberates through the ground. In one swift movement, Chang Sun slices through one of its heads. But the Hydra is not so easily vanquished. Its severed head regenerates. The Hydra regards him with a grudging respect, acknowledging his strength, yet proclaiming that he will pay dearly for his transgression. The poison in the air is potent, but Chang Sun endures, fortified by an immunity that shields him from its fatal effects. Yet the Hydra's presence is unlike anything he has ever faced. The battle takes on a surreal quality as his existential power swells, feeding off the Hydra's fury and amplifying his resolve. The Hydra attacks Chang Sun's mind, trying to break his spirit, but he resists, determined to stay focused. The Hydra lunges again, its head striking with relentless fury, each one bloating up with poison that clouds the entire area. However, when the Hydra thinks it has defeated him, he jumps up through the cloud of poison unharmed. The Hydra's poison is nothing before his immunity. In the midst of this brutal clash, Chang Sun senses a shift within himself. His battle with the Hydra awakens something deeper. He feels the Hydra's power falter as his own existential power surges, consuming its strength and transforming it into his own. He cuts off its heads one by one in what could be called a one-sided beating, but the Hydra keeps regenerating, growing stronger with each attack. Chang Sun realizes he needs a new strategy. The Hydra heaves a noxious breath, a cloud of toxic fumes swirling around it. Chang Sun feels its lethality even with his invulnerable body skill. The Hydra's breath surpasses mere physical damage. It is imbued with dark magic. Undeterred, Chang Sun activates celestial footwork. As he strives to reach an even greater speed, he notices something strange. The frequency of the Hydra's breaths is slowing. It feels as though time itself is bending to his will. This phenomenon cannot be explained by martial arts alone. He has tapped into an existential power, a force beyond physical abilities. Driven by this awakening, Chang Sun launches himself toward the Hydra, severing its heads with precision. The Hydra regenerates more furious with each resurgence. Chang Sun understands now that this existential power is what grants the constellations their dominion over the Abyss, a power rooted in the core of one's existence, bound to their will.